Before using, I had great memories. Our family was always very close together. My parents were very loving. I had a good sister. When I was 16, I started playing competitive golf.
It wasn't hell at first. Like the first little while I smoked weed like 2 times a week or whatever, like not that often. It was like fun. I'd hang out with my friends, you know, cough a bunch. And
I kind of started with smoking cigarettes at the smoke pit at school, and I remember someone saying, let's go smoke some marijuana. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's skip math today and let's go smoke a joint.
I'd see it around the skate park and stuff. I was always more interested in skateboarding, but it also wasn't really a big deal to have it around. I felt comfortable trying it and interested in trying it at that point.
I don't think I realized at the time. I thought I was young, I was impressionable, I wanted to hang out with those people, I wanted to be liked. So I thought, why not? Try it.
Marijuana was really good for a while for me, and then it was good with problems, and then it was just problems.
The problem now is that the perception of marijuana is that it's relatively safe and relatively harmless. We know without a shadow of a doubt that that's not the case. It's actually become much, much more dangerous than it was 40 years ago, but the perception of it, that it's safe and relatively harmless, is there, and so kids are using it.
It's not harmless. It's a powerful drug.
Smoke more weed and do more drugs, and smoke more weed and do more drugs and puke a few times along the way. It was pretty sad, actually, thinking about it.
I would abstain from relationships. I would walk away from responsibilities. I would lie and lie on top of lies and lie to cover up more lies. And I knew at that point that my addiction was out of control. I was using every day.
It became a problem for me quickly, but I was actively ignoring those problems. And it's hard to say for me when it became a problem for others. I was too out of it to be concerned with what other people's problems were. I was only concerned about myself.
But mentally, I wasn't happy. I was just using all the time.
Everybody's like, pot's not that bad. Meanwhile, so it's like it totally messed me up a lot.
Short-term memory loss. I got anxiety, depression from regular use. You know, like my lungs weren't good. I was hacking up tar and gross stuff all the time, and I was coughing all the time.
Marijuana has hundreds of compounds in it. It has more tar and more carcinogenic compounds than tobacco does. So we know it causes chronic lung inflammation, and we know it causes bronchitis. The studies are yet to be done, the long-term studies, to show whether it causes cancer.
I was always so scared of using drugs, and then once I tried marijuana, I was like, oh, I'm not scared of doing drugs anymore. For me, it was a gateway drug.
And I really feel that marijuana was a gateway drug for me. And I really wish I hadn't have went there.
The connections I made through the people I used to smoke weed with and get high with, it's like those connections that I had wouldn't have been there if I didn't smoke weed first.
Early regular use has been correlated with increased addiction later in life, not only to marijuana, but to other substances.
A lot of the past 5 years is blackout. I don't remember much. Like it took a big toll on my education. Like I lost a year of schooling because I was just way too high to go to school, right? Like to this day, I don't really know what I was smoking because I didn't, you know, like you never know.
You know, marijuana today is not like the marijuana was in the 70s and the 80s.
Back in the 70s and 80s, it literally could be called grass. It almost was as weak as grass. It was 1 or 2% THC, which is the psychoactive element in marijuana. Today's marijuana is 5 to 10 times or higher, stronger than it was then. I remember being a teenager, and I would say, you know, you are going to make choices that I have nothing to do with. They're your choices. You get to do that. That's the beauty of being a teenager. But what I'd like you to know is that when someone hands you a joint, what they're handing you. They are handing you a substance that is very different from what the media has led you to believe, perhaps some well-meaning adults have led you to believe. It is a much more potent drug than it was when your parents were smoking marijuana, if they did. If you
become one of the unfortunate ones to become addicted to it, it will have a long-term impact on your life. It will impact your IQ. That's been shown in a long-term study, a 30-year study, that you will have an IQ drop. It can lead you to other mental health problems, increased depression, increased anxiety. I know that some of you are probably smoking it because you have anxiety and you have depression, and it feels good to be high when you have those things. But if you continue to use it for that and self-medicate in that way, and we know now from studies that it will end up with more depression and more anxiety in the long term. These are some of the things that I want you guys to know. It feels good, it gets you high, but it's not without consequences. You're smoking a drug that 1 in 6 of you who try it will become addicted to.
I know there's about the stigma or cliche that marijuana is an addictive substance, but the fact is that addiction is a disease, and one that I have, and I got addicted to it.
You're smoking a drug that is correlated with psychosis, an increased risk of psychosis.
People are going into psychosis from smoking marijuana.
I get to doing it every day, and then I end up in the hospital with marijuana-induced psychosis. Like, it's actually...
I just lost grip with reality entirely. Marijuana psychosis.
I was having psychotic episodes. I saw the repercussions. I saw my family not being as close, to a point in my life where it wasn't fun anymore.
So I was in the psychosis. I don't know how long I was in the psychosis for, but I knew I had like 1 foot in a tar pit of whatever delusion I was living in, and 1 foot like not. So it was like this weird mangled thing. I thought I was Hitler. Like, my mom told me a story that I was yelling at her. I went dead weight, and my eyes weren't really there. And she said it was like she was trying to talk to me, but I wasn't saying anything. And I don't remember any of this. And I told her I wanted to kill myself. And the cops come, put me in cuffs, and take me to Surrey Memorial.
And I got to the psych ward. Part of my psychosis was I felt that the police were out to get me. And I felt that there were hidden cameras watching me, and there were microphones everywhere.
A lot of people don't think marijuana-induced psychosis is a real thing. That happens, and it's like, it's not fun, you know? Psycho, you're crazy.
My out of control culminated in a psychotic break where I could no longer sleep, like trapping me in my mind and paranoid thoughts. And I was in the acute phase of psychosis for about 2 or 3 weeks, where I was convinced things were true that weren't, and things were happening that weren't happening, and I couldn't be told otherwise. And I felt like I was losing grip on reality, and part of me felt like I was going insane.
So marijuana psychosis is a loss of contact with reality. It's typified by either hallucinations and or paranoia. And it's something that you see in certain mental health diseases like schizophrenia. But as the THC content in marijuana has gone skyrocketing, since that combination has happened in street marijuana, we've seen an escalation in psychosis caused by heavy marijuana use. People with a genetic predisposition to schizophrenia may have a family history, will unmask that schizophrenia. It may never have occurred had they not used marijuana heavily, but when they use marijuana, it unmasks and the paranoid schizophrenia manifests.
You don't have to drink and do drugs to have fun. I have more fun now and I laugh more now than I ever did before. If you do what's suggested from your treatment center or people in the meetings, if you do everything they tell you to do, you will not use drugs again. But if you do everything they tell you to do, you will stay clean.
And then I find myself at a treatment center, but I stayed for 2 nights, left, and then got clean through a 12-step fellowship. It saved my life.
I asked if I could set up an appointment with a counselor and just talk about my options, and I think that's really what changed my life. What really made me turn things around was I didn't want to feel horrible anymore. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be able to love. I didn't want to be taking off on people all the time. And I met with a counselor and I told her how I felt and I got help.
Admissions for rehab, for addiction treatment, marijuana is now the #1 reason for admission among adolescents and young people, surpassing alcohol and all other drugs.
I needed help, and this guy came along and saw that there was a good guy buried beneath all the chaos and the addiction. I felt like unjudged, and thankfully I went to treatment before it was triggered again, and it was relieving. It was really relieving to meet people like me that I felt understood what I was going through and could relate.
Go to a meeting right away, phone a friend in recovery. Basically just tell someone that you trust. If you talk about it, it loses its power. Basically just talk about it, don't hold it in. If you need treatment, go to treatment. Just change your life, change all the people you're hanging out with. As hard as that is, you gotta get rid of all your old using friends and find new friends. You gotta change everything. Yeah. It's not easy. It's hard. It's not easy, so.
I didn't know how bad it could get.
Yeah, just weed. It's just weed.
Young people should just know the potential risks.
More recent studies have been shown that, again, regular use of marijuana amongst teenagers can lead to increased depression downstream, increased anxiety downstream, especially with the more potent strains of marijuana that we're seeing. We also know that long-term use of marijuana correlates with decreased life satisfaction. People who use marijuana like to say, oh, I'm just smoking a joint, I'm relaxing, it's helping me out. I don't want to join the rat race and achieve like everyone else does, I just want to be happy. But when you sample those same people 20 years later on their own indicators, not on objective measures of what education did they get or how much money do they make, but am I happy with my life? Am I happy with my relationships? Heavy marijuana users score lower than people who are not using marijuana heavily when they were young.
And drugs are not the answer. No, it's just gonna make you feel worse. Maybe the first few times for a little while it feels good, but eventually it's gonna take you down.